Welcome to Persons of Interest. My name is Derek Dockett. Like myself, Stephen Herzog is a Missouri State graduate, and we are both sports-loving Twitter users. Now, I don't remember when we first connected on the platform, but that's not important for this podcast. Stephen has a passion for journalism and currently serves as the news content coach for the Springfield News-Leader in Springfield, Missouri. We discussed what he does for a living, the current state of journalism, and even touched on some sports, including how and why he's a fan of the Cleveland Browns. Here's Stephen Herzog on Persons of Interest. Stephen Herzog works for the Springfield News-Leader. How long have you been with News-Leader now?
It's been a little over 6 years now.
Okay, awesome. So obviously you spend your time promoting what you guys do online and Twitter. That's how we sort of connected. Yeah. I followed the News-Leader thanks to my connection with Missouri State, being alum. But I think with the state of journalism, how it is now in the country, what you guys do and how you constantly trying to promote, hey, we're doing something that's a public service. What we do is important. It's important that people know that.
Sure.
So, I want to make sure that here's your chance to tell your side of the story. Because I think most people don't understand there's not a real form. Like, we don't get the chance to talk to journalists and people that work in newspapers and get their side of the story, like outside of just the job they do reporting.
Sure.
So I want to be able to give you this forum because I think it's important. I think it's cool. But also the story of like why it's $1 a month to pay. You know, it's not expensive to buy a subscription and all those kinds of things. But so how about this? Let's start where. How'd you get your interest in journalism and what led you to the News-Leader?
So it started with sports. As a kid, I was a stats nerd. I couldn't wait for, I think it was called Baseball Weekly. You'd find it at the truck stop. It had all the stats in the back.
Yeah.
I love that thing. That's kind of pre-internet, at least before most families had internet. So that was huge. And I followed that interest all the way through high school. And I played basketball, but I wasn't nearly good enough to even play like NAIA or anything like that. So what could I do to still have an interest in sports? And I was like, well, I could be a sports writer. So I went to college for journalism and I got into it that way. And along the way, realized that I liked news more than sport. I'm still a huge sports fan, but for my job, I much prefer the news side of it.
Awesome. Are you native to Springfield?
No, I kind of bounced around, but I went to college at Missouri State. Okay. So this kind of feels like home.
Awesome. As a second home for me, too.
Right.
I'm back here for alumni board meeting this weekend. So you find out you like journalism by way of sports. How'd you sort of rise to your current position now at the News-Leader? How that sort of happened over time?
Sure. Well, unfortunately, in the journalism industry, some of it's just through attrition.
Sure.
Like newsrooms are getting smaller, people are leaving, people are retiring, and that sort of thing. But you know, people might be surprised. There's a lot of people in the room who have no interest in rising above reporter. It's fun to be a reporter, and you don't have any interest in. That's
the most engaging part. You're out in the public. You're out there talking to people,
telling interesting stories. Right. There's a lot of people who just love to write and don't want to stop writing. So, but I have some interest in editing, and I love management. I love working with people. We call it coaching sometimes too. It's really what it feels like. I love that aspect of it. So I reported for a few years, did a few different beats. Then I became the engagement editor for a while, which is basically I was in charge of the opinion page. And we also did some other silly things online. It was kind of an interesting job. I did that for a couple years and really liked it. And then we had an opening for one of the coaches, which is like a section editor, to oversee some reporters. And I went for that. My boss, Cheryl Whitsitt, she told her boss that she was going to put me there even before I asked to be there. So I think she was kind of expecting that was the natural progression for us. And so I've been doing that for almost a year now, and it's been a lot of fun.
So I've had another guest on who works at the Springfield News-Leader, Wyatt Wheeler, who's, I guess he is the sports department.
That's right.
At the News-Leader. You're technically his boss. Do I have that correctly?
Right. Yeah.
So do you get the chance to coach him on content ideas, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wyatt's a lot of fun to work with. It's very collaborative. He's got a lot of his own ideas, but he's happy to hear other ones too. He's always willing to try new things, totally different. He's doing some kind of investigative stuff right now. I won't say what it is because it hasn't published yet, but I've been really impressed. He's trying something new. He's doing a good job with it. and he's a hard worker. He's one of the hardest workers we have in the room. He kind of has to be. He's the whole department, but he takes it seriously, and he does a great job. He's really smart about what's going to resonate online. He prepared last night to write a story about Juwan Morgan, who graduated from Waynesville. He didn't get drafted, but he got signed after the draft. He played at Indiana. One of the first guys from Southwest Missouri to go to the NBA. So he had that ready, and it was hugely popular. People online searching for Juwan Morgan, and he kind of anticipated that. So he's a lot of fun to work with, and he's a complete goofball. Everybody that knows him. Yeah. So he keeps it light. So yeah, that's great.
Now, we don't need to make this a pro Wyatt episode of the podcast. So he's already had his time in the sun on my show. But so I'm curious to know, how do you come up with somebody? So one of the recent things that Wyatt published, and I'm sure you probably had some input, was the Missouri State sort of, I don't know if I call it report card, but you guys asked for fan input and votes about, what you think about game atmosphere. What grade would you give all the major sports teams at Missouri State? Yeah. Something that you don't traditionally see from newspapers, more reader interaction type of content, which I loved it because you guys, published, different sport, different day. So I was on edge to see, man, when's that football report coming out? It was interesting. It had me sort of hooked to know what was going on. Ideas like that, I'm guessing, is what you guys collaborate on. Yeah,
it's a little bit of mix of both. That one was his idea. He came up with that all on his own, and I thought it was great, so I said go for it. And then also, it's not a new idea, but I suggested to him recently to do a mailbag. So he's been reaching out to people trying to get mailbag questions. We both really like that reader engagement type of stuff. It's a really fun community. The sports community here isn't as big as some places, but they're really invested. It's
passionate.
Right.
Passionate.
Yeah. They were not happy about Jackie Stiles leaving, that kind of thing. So he eats that up. He really likes to back and forth with them. And I think part of that comes from his time on Twitter. He's really good on Twitter, and he's used to going back and forth with people. So yeah, we're always looking for things like that to do.
So when you do this online stuff that works well online, how does that connect with the actual paper itself? Now, I know subscriptions aren't what they were, look back 15, 20 years ago, but you guys still have the paper. Yeah. So is there still a connection of this runs online only, this runs paper, this runs combo? How does that sort of work?
Yeah, that's great. There's a little bit of all of it. And sports is a little bit different than news too, but I would say most things are both. Most stuff is just, it's a good story. It has a home online. It has a home in print. There are some things that just don't make sense in print. Like yesterday, I put together a silly little thing for John Goodman's birthday. It was just like, because he went to Missouri State too. And just some of the great moments and some with clips and GIFs and stuff. And we're not going to try to find a way to put that in print, because the media was the big part of it. At the same time, we have some stuff in print that it's a different demographic, honestly, that the column from... I'm trying to think of some of the stuff that doesn't go into it, but we get some submitted community content, like we get from the library or from the Department of Conservation, and some of that stuff is online, and I can't remember which isn't, but there's some of that kind of stuff that is just a little more valuable to our print readers than it is to our online readers.
Do you guys still see a level of... Now, Springfield's a different kind of community, like versus St. Louis, where I'm from, where I think more and more people are fine with the online edition, but there's still a set of folks that like to get the paper. And,
sure.
On a Saturday or Sunday, have the paper. Do you guys see any ebbs and flows in terms of what's more popular, or have people sort of taken hold of the online and you guys put more emphasis there? Is it either way?
Well, for sure, the emphasis always is continuing to increase to online, just because as demographics change. Right. There's a group of readers who are quite a bit older, even like beyond retirement. There's a lot of retired folks who are totally happy to read on their phone or their tablet or whatever. But the older readers still love print. They're never going to get onto online. But that's just the demographic that'll continue to decrease, and then our product will change. So we still have to try to get them what they want. They're loyal, and they pay more than anybody else. The people that get the print paper pay more, so we feel some loyalty to them too. We appreciate them, so we try to give them what they want. At the same time, knowing that the future is going to be different, trying to make sure we're not behind when print's done. It's someday print will be done just because we don't have the need for it anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody will have it online. You've got to constantly balance that. Usually we do that by trying to keep the reporters' mindsets online, and then the editors kind of try to navigate print so they can focus on online content.
So does your position involve managing social media for the News-Leader at all? You guys have someone that's dedicated for that?
Not usually. We don't have a lot of folks anymore who are dedicated to one thing. Okay. I think there's like 16 people in the newsroom now. From the heyday when I started, it was like 40 or 50. And even a decade ago, I think it was like 80 or so. So it's a much different operation. Gotcha. But I have access and I can post when we need to. Yeah. But we have other people who do it most of the time. And then Wyatt, for example, tends to post his own stuff because for him, Twitter's more important than Facebook.
Right.
And sports is kind of the only area that's like that. Everything else, we get a bigger reach from Facebook. So it's kind of a whole team effort.
Gotcha. So I asked that question because when I don't tend to post in the comments section of newspaper or on Facebook when an article's there, but there's that, we'll call it the vocal minority of people that say, they click on an article on Facebook and they say, to read this, subscribe.
Yeah.
So we paywalls is the term out there. When you hear people or see people complain about that, what's your reaction to it?
So I kind of have two minds about it. To some extent, I understand where they're coming from. Almost everything on the internet is free.
Right.
You get used to everything on the internet being free. And for years and years, newspapers too. Newspapers are free. So we got to convince people that's not the case anymore. And that's tough. And there are some people who are really a couple dollars a month. They got to figure out how to make that work. There are those folks too. At the same time, we really try to show people the value, and it can be that cheap. There's deals all the time for online.
Right.
$1 a month, $2 a month. Just to, there are news outlets that are free. We don't think they do nearly as much as we do. We think we're worth that extra little bit of money. And we've got people to pay, not as many as we used to, but we still got people that work hard, and they deserve to earn. Nobody's getting rich in the newspaper industry,
right?
Unless you own a newspaper, maybe. But they're trying to make a living, and they're trying to provide for their families. So we hope people understand that and are willing to support the journalism.
Yeah. So I'm going to pick on Wyatt because he's easy to pick on.
Sure.
But when you think about the next generation of writer or journalist, it's changed. Social media has helped change because we have this instant gratification thing now. And when breaking news happens, someone's on the site, they're tweeting pictures, sharing video, a press conference with the police chief happens, stream it through Periscope. These things have molded the way journalism has now taken shape in this decade. When you think about educating like the next college sophomore or junior that thinks they want to be a writer, how important is the actual skill of writing versus having those other skills of being so tuned in with multimedia, in your opinion?
I would say the underlying skills are the same. You have to be curious. You have to know what questions to ask. You have to be able to analyze the world around you and be able, quick on your feet mentally and physically in some situations, and just be ready to respond to whatever's happening. Now, how you then present that to people could change completely. There's not so many 40, 50-inch stories in the newspaper anymore. There still are some, but that kind of fades away a little bit. It's more kind of quick hit. Maybe a video is the best way to tell a story. Maybe it's a photo gallery. And I'm sure that's going to continue to change. But from my experience, if you're willing to learn, you can roll with however the technology changes, however the storytelling changes. You can do that as long as you have those real baseline skills to begin with.
So when we first started talking, you mentioned sports is sort of what drove you into sort of journalism. Your favorite sports teams you follow?
I have 9 teams that I consider my teams, but
you got a portfolio.
Yeah, I've got a lot of bandwidth for love of sports, but I would say Missouri State, because I went there. I'm still a huge fan. Chicago Bulls. I grew up part of my life in Illinois.
Okay.
Kind of between the two Jordan title eras, but I mean, just fell in love with the Bulls in the NBA. Grew up a Cardinals fan because my family was a Cardinals fan, and then over the years adopted the Royals because they were like a lovable loser.
And Cardinal fan and Royal fan. You might be some sort of weird unicorn.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And I've got some weird ones too. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. And it's kind of hard to explain.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't get to talk to many people about this, but I'm really into world football too. So I'm a huge Liverpool fan.
Okay.
So those are the main ones.
How are you a Cleveland Browns fan?
So I think I was living in I was having back and forth between Missouri and Chicago and Illinois. Didn't really get into the Chiefs. Didn't really get into the Bears for whatever reason. I still kind of like the Bears, but it was weird. Like I thought Eric Metcalf was really cool.
Okay.
He was like, he could run, he could catch, he could return kicks. I thought the uniforms were kind of cool. And I was like, you know what? I like the Browns. That'll be my team. And I've kind of stuck with them. They left me for a while, but they're back now. And
you stuck with them is actually a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they've turned things around last year and we'll see how they progress along, but man, that's not an easy team to be a fan
but
of.
It's kind of cool though to be like, I like the ups and downs. You know, the Cardinals have been good forever. That's kind of why I adopted the Royals too. I needed the down too. Like it's more representative of life, I think. That way. Yeah.
I try to tell people as a Cardinal fan now, this is in retrospect to the Blues winning, the Stanley Cup a week ago. But as a Cardinal fan, we really have been spoiled because, now granted, the parts of the 80s weren't as always, they were lean, we'll put it that way. But turning the page into the 90s and that lean era, but then all of a sudden 2006 happens, 2011 happens, you go to the World Series a couple times, 2004, or 2003, just you actually make it or win a pennant, and you may not win the World Series, but still having success. I mean, winning 100 games in a season is kind of like, whoa, we have been spoiled. And I try to tell my friends that are hardcore Cardinal fans that complain, and maybe complain's the wrong word, of, what's going on? Like trade so-and-so. It's like, I don't know what's going on. And part of this is me who's worked in sports, granted collegiate sports, but you don't really know what's going on in the front office. It's just sports. It's just sports. That's how I put it.
Yeah,
so, man, I can't get over the Cleveland Brown thing, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Most people in Springfield are Chiefs fans,
right?
Especially now that there are no more Rams in St. Louis.
Right.
When I was in college down here, the Rams were a thing, and there weren't many Rams fans, even including those that lived in St. Louis. And then the Super Bowl happens, and it's kind of like, you're a bandwagon. It's like, no, that's actually where I'm from. Right. So I think I can be a Rams fan. So, which now I'm not a Rams fan. I don't have a football team, actually. I think I root for the Red Zone channel.
Oh,
I think that's my team.
Keep it interesting.
Yeah, just to be able to watch scoring plays whenever I want. So, well, cool. I appreciate this. I didn't want to keep it long, but I just want to sort of get background on what you guys do, because like I said, I appreciate journalism, because now, as someone that worked in sports, had a connection to beat writers and things like that, and now on the outside, I really do look at it a totally different way. Just how I look at sports in a totally different way from having the experience. It's like I said, what you guys do is providing a service to the public. So, I mean, that sort of sums up what I was hoping to get out of this, and you said it more eloquently than I could have probably said it. So I appreciate you taking time. I guess tell folks how they can follow you on Twitter. Yeah. And follow the News-Leader on Twitter, and give all the websites and all that stuff. Yeah.
So I'm on Twitter at @SHerzogNL. You can search Stephen Herzog too. News-Leader. I don't actually know what the actual handle is, but you can find the Springfield News-Leader on Twitter.
I'll link it in the notes of the
podcast. And then news-leader.com is where we have all that cool stuff.
Awesome. Stephen, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Stephen Herzog for taking time to join me on the podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at @SHerzognL. That's at SHERZOGNL. And follow the Springfield News-Leader as well at Springfield NL. I hope you enjoyed listening, and would certainly welcome any feedback, questions, or comments. Feel free to shoot me a tweet at @DDocket. And you're welcome to leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Thank you for listening to Persons of Interest.